You won't believe the envelope I opened one Tuesday morning. It didn't just ruin my day, it flipped my entire world upside down. It was the kind of envelope that makes your heart beat weird. Thick, cream-colored, with gold lettering like something out of a royal wedding. Fancy. Too fancy. The kind that screams money before you even touch it. I didn't even have to read the return address. I knew the handwriting. My daughter Kathy's. Perfect cursive, sharp and stiff, like it was judging me just for looking at it. But what really hit me wasn't what was inside. It was how it was addressed. Mrs. Elaine Mack. Not Mom. Not Mother. Just my full name, like I was some stranger on a mailing list. That tiny detail said everything. For a split second I thought, maybe it's an invite. Maybe she finally came around. A wedding invitation. Maybe she wants me there. My heart fluttered in that pathetic, hopeful way hearts do when they've been stomped on before. But no. I opened it and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Not an invitation. Not a heartfelt note. An invoice. $70,000. 35 grand for the wedding. Another 35 for a luxury honeymoon in Tuscany. And at the bottom, a handwritten message from Kathy. You should feel lucky I'm letting you contribute at all. My coffee slipped from my hand and exploded on the kitchen floor. That mug had been with me for years. And now it lay there in pieces, just like my last nerve. 27 years of motherhood. And this is what I get. No call. No invitation. Just a bill. And let me tell you something. Something inside me broke in the best way possible. Not my heart. My silence. I stood there for a long minute, staring at the mess on the kitchen floor. Coffee seeping into the cracks between tiles. Ceramic shards scattered like teeth after a punch. And that invoice. Just lying there like it belonged. And you know what I felt? Not sadness. Not heartbreak. Felt fire. A slow, cold anger that curled around my spine and told me, no more. I wasn't a person to my daughter anymore. I was a wallet with a pulse. So I did something I hadn't done in years. Got to work. Not cleaning. Not crying. Planning. I pulled out my old laptop and sat down at the kitchen table. The same table I'd once used to help Kathy with school projects, bandaged scraped knees, planned birthday parties. And now I was planning how to remind her who she was dealing with. I looked up wedding venues in Westchester. Found the one she booked. Matched the date from mutual friends' Instagram posts. She'd blocked me, but she forgot about people who still liked me. Then the honeymoon resort. Tuscany. Private villas. Infinity pool. Private chef. Thousands per night. Every piece of her fantasy laid out before me like a puzzle. And I had the final piece. The power to flip the board. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. This felt special enough. The invoice still sat there on the floor as I dialed the first number. The wedding planner. She answered in that polished customer service tone you get after years of managing bridezillas. Slaughter Wedding Planning, Christine speaking. I smiled, cool and calm. Hi Christine. This is Elaine Mack. Kathy's mother. Her voice instantly changed. Oh, Mrs. Mack. I've been meaning to connect with you. Kathy mentioned you'd be covering the wedding expenses. It's going to be absolutely stunning. I took a long sip of wine. I'm sure it will be. I'd love to discuss the arrangements. Would tomorrow at 2 o'clock work? Of course. Perfect. I hung up and stared down at the invoice. The audacity of it. The entitlement. The complete erasure of everything I've done for her. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. Not to destroy her. Teach her. Because actions have consequences. Even when you think your mother's too soft to fight back. The next day I got dressed like I was going into battle. Navy dress I hadn't worn in years. Pearls that used to belong to my mother. Hair neatly pulled back. Nothing flashy. Just the kind of elegance that whispers, I can afford to say no. I wanted Christine to see me and believe I could write that $70,000 check in my sleep. Because appearances. Kathy cared about them more than anything. Let her wedding planner see the version of me Kathy was trying to erase. The building was all glass and steel, fifth floor, river views. The kind of place that smells like expensive candles and pressure. Christine welcomed me with a flawless smile. "Mrs. Mack, please have a seat. Coffee. Water." "Coffee would be lovely," I said, cool as ice. She poured it from one of those silver sets that probably cost more than my rent. We made small talk. Venue details, imported linens, the villa in Tuscany with a private chef. I let her talk. Let her glow. Until she finally said, "The invoice I sent should have outlined everything." And then I struck. "I'm afraid there's been some confusion," I said, setting the cup down gently. "I never agreed to pay for this wedding or the honeymoon. In fact, I wasn't even invited." You could hear the record scratch in her brain. She blinked. "Oh. But Kathy told me. She said you were contributing because you felt bad about missing the ceremony." I leaned forward, steady as a metronome. "Did she sign the contract?" "Yes. Kathy and Gary both signed. But I didn't. So let me ask you, Christine, what happens if the money doesn't come?" Christine tried to hide her panic, but her fingers trembled as she reached for her own coffee. "Well, without full payment, the venue, the caterer, the florist, they don't move forward. Everything requires payment before the event. In other words, no money, no wedding." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I stood up and looked her right in the eyes. "When Kathy calls you, and she will, I want you to tell her what you just told me. That without the money, the wedding is off. And then you give her my number. If she wants to talk, she can do it like an adult. No more invoices. No more assumptions. A real conversation." Christine nodded, shell-shocked. And just before I walked out the door, I turned and added, "You're not to blame for this. You're just doing your job. But I won't be footing the bill for someone who thinks love is a transaction." The elevator ride down felt different than the ride up. Like I'd left something heavy behind. Something I didn't need to carry anymore. Outside, the air smelled like dying leaves and new beginnings. And I knew exactly who I needed to call next. Her name was Rosa. My daughter's childhood best friend. Back when they were little girls who shared secrets, glittery nail polish, and birthday sleepovers. But somewhere around high school, Kathy decided Rosa wasn't enough. Her dad worked in a garage, her mom cleaned houses. That didn't fit with Kathy's new image. So she cut her off like a bad haircut. But me. I always loved that girl. She had more kindness in her pinky than Kathy had in her entire designer wardrobe. So I found Rosa's number through an old neighbor, and within a few hours, we were sitting across from each other in a cafe in Tarrytown, just two grown women with a long, unfinished story between them. "Mrs. Mack," she said when she walked in, arms already open. "You look amazing." "Elaine," I corrected her with a smile. "We're adults now." She looked just like I remembered. Same warm eyes, same natural grace. She'd grown into herself, like a flower that bloomed late but strong. And when I told her what was going on, about Kathy, about the invoice, about the wedding I wasn't invited to but was expected to pay for, she didn't flinch. She said one word. "Unbelievable." I asked if she still did photography. She did. Weddings mostly. But lately, also divorces. Infidelity cases. Legal documentation. People needing proof. "I've got an eye for catching moments people try to hide," she said, stirring her coffee. That's when the idea sparked. "What if I asked you to photograph a wedding you're not exactly welcome at?" Rosa didn't even hesitate. "You mean like crashing it?" "More like documenting it. From a legal public area. I just want proof. Proof of the event I'm supposedly funding but not even allowed to attend." She leaned in, eyes narrowing slightly. "Elaine, what exactly are you planning?" I told her everything. Christine's confession. The collapsing house of cards. The vendors about to walk. The assumption that I'd fold like I always had. She didn't just listen. She understood. "I'll do it," she said. "And I'll teach you how to protect yourself too. How to record calls, store evidence, track manipulation. You're not being petty, Elaine. You're being smart." And then she said something I'll never forget. You were the first adult who ever made me feel like I mattered. Kathy may have thrown me away, but you never did. I've got your back. That day, sitting across from Rosa, I realized something huge. I hadn't just lost a daughter over the years. I'd lost myself. But now, I was getting me back. The calls started just 3 days after my meeting with Christine. First it was Gary, Kathy's fiancé. His voice was tight-clipped, trying to sound calm but cracking underneath. Elaine, we need to talk. There seems to be some confusion about the wedding payments. Please call me back. I didn't. Matey sat in my kitchen, played the message 3 more times just to hear the desperation bleeding through the cracks. Next day, another voicemail. This is ridiculous. Kathy is beside herself. The wedding is in 2 weeks. You need to stop this. As if I had done something wrong. Then finally Kathy called. And her tone. Cold silk. Words chosen like weapons. Mother. I don't know what game you think you're playing, but it stops now. This is my wedding day. You need to honor your commitments. She never mentioned the invoice. Never acknowledged that she hadn't invited me. That she'd treated me like an ATM, not a parent. Just outrage. Just entitlement. Rosa checked in later that day. How are you holding up? I'm fine, I said. How's the venue? She laughed softly. Vendors are getting nervous. Some are now demanding full payment before the event. Words getting around. But let her scramble. Let her learn what happens when you treat people like tools instead of humans. And then Rosa told me something else. Something that made me laugh out loud for the first time in weeks. She'd run into an old neighbor of mine, Jacqueline, whose son used to ride bikes with Kathy. Turns out Jacqueline now works for the catering company Kathy booked. And Kathy had been treating their staff like dirt. Screaming at servers, demanding impossible changes, talking down to everyone. The catering bill. $12,000. And they hadn't been paid a dime. Jacqueline said if I chose not to pay, she'd make sure the kitchen staff knew why. They'd probably cater your next birthday for free, Rosa said. That image. My daughter's oh-so-elegant guests sitting around waiting for a dinner that never comes, was almost poetic. Am I being cruel? Asked Rosa. She didn't even let me finish. Cruel would be showing up to the wedding and causing a scene. Cruel would be airing all this online. You're doing none of that. You're not being cruel, Elaine. You're being clear. That night I cooked myself a real meal. Set the table with the good china I'd been saving for no reason. Poured a glass of wine. Played soft music. And for the first time in years, I ate dinner like I mattered. 'Cause I did. 'Cause I do. The phone rang again while I was washing the dishes. Caller ID, Gary. But when I picked up, it was Kathy's voice. Frantic. We need to talk. Tonight. I didn't flinch. I didn't ask why. Hello, Kathy. How are you? How am I? I'm dealing with a crisis because you've lost your mind. The wedding is in 8 days, and vendors are threatening to pull out because of you. Kept my tone light. I'm not playing games, sweetheart. I'm just not paying for a wedding I wasn't invited to. Silence. Not awkward silence. The kind where you know someone's brain is short-circuiting because they just realized their assumptions don't work anymore. Then she spoke. You weren't invited because we knew you'd make it about yourself. We knew you'd bring your situation into it. My situation. Living modestly. Wearing normal clothes. Not driving a luxury car. Translation. Not rich enough to be seen with. Gary's family has expectations, she continued, her voice low like she was ashamed. We weren't sure you'd blend in. Her words landed like ice in my chest. Not just cold, sharp. Took a breath. So let me get this straight. You didn't want me seen at your wedding. But you wanted my money behind it. Don't twist this, she snapped. It's not what you think. No. Yes. Because from where I'm standing, it's exactly what it looks like. Another pause. Then came the shift. The tone I knew too well. Her please get me out of trouble voice from her teenage years. I know the invoice was poorly worded, she said softly. I was stressed. I didn't mean to come off that way. But you're my mother. Don't you want me to be happy? I let her question hang in the air for a beat. Then answered calmly. I want you to be a person I can be proud of. Someone who treats people with decency. Someone who values relationships more than appearances. But right now, Kathy, that's not who you are. You're being emotional, she hissed. This is why we didn't invite you. Well then, I said gently, I'm glad you didn't. Because now I don't have to pay either. Hung up. And you know what? I didn't shake. I didn't cry. I didn't second-guess myself. I turned off the ringer and watched the screen light up with call after call after call. Gary. Kathy. Unknown numbers. I let them all go to voicemail. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was running from anything. I felt like I was finally standing still on my own 2 feet. October 15th. The day of the wedding. I woke up to gray skies and rain tapping softly at the window. A drizzle, the kind that soaks through slowly and ruins anything unprepared. Rosa had already texted me by 6 in the morning. Venue looks chaotic. Vendor trucks pulling out. Still want me there? I replied instantly. Yes. Document everything. By 10 I had 17 missed calls. They weren't stopping. So I stopped answering. Instead I tidied my apartment, filed some financial papers, made breakfast. If Kathy planned to come after me legally, I'd be ready, with every receipt and voicemail saved. And then the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. Kathy, still in her pajamas, hair unwashed, a coat thrown over her shoulders like armor. Gary stood behind her, silent, stiff, eyes rimmed red like he hadn't slept in 2 nights. I opened the door but didn't step aside. Mother, she said, voice hoarse. We need to talk. I gave her the same calm I'd given her planner. Good morning, Kathy. Gary. You both looked tense. She didn't even acknowledge it. My wedding is ruined. The caterers demanded $12,000 in cash this morning or they were leaving. The florist took everything back. The photographer says he's owed $8,000 and won't shoot a single picture. I nodded gently. That sounds incredibly stressful. Kathy's voice cracked. What does this have to do with you? Gary stepped forward, his composure unraveling. Cut the act, Elaine. You know what this is about. You're sabotaging us because you didn't get your invitation. I raised my eyebrows. I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm just not paying for your wedding. Those are very different things. Same outcome, Kathy snapped. And the mask dropped. Her voice, bitter, furious, and finally honest. You have no idea what this is costing us. Not just money. Reputation. Gary's family flew in. My friends came from 3 states. And now they're all asking why the entire thing is falling apart. I looked them both in the eye. What are you telling them? Gary didn't blink. That Kathy's mother pulled the funding out of spite. Is that really the story you want to go with? Yes. Because here's what I know. You planned a wedding you couldn't afford. You assumed I would pay for it without asking. You didn't invite me. And now you're facing the consequences of those assumptions. Kathy's tears welled up. Real ones this time. The kind that don't fall because of pain, but because you finally realize you've lost control. Please, Mom. I know I messed up, but this is my wedding day. Can't we figure it out later? And just like that, felt it again. That familiar tug. That urge to smooth things over. To make it better. To throw myself on the fire so she wouldn't have to burn. But I didn't. Instead, I asked her, if I gave you the money today, what happens tomorrow? She blinked. What do you mean? I mean, would I be invited to dinner? Holidays? Your child's birthday one day? Or would I go back to being invisible until you need something again? Kathy didn't answer. Gary looked at her and I saw it. The gears turning. The cracks forming. Continued. Do you know Kathy has never visited me here? Not once in the 3 years I've lived in this apartment. She sends cards addressed to Elaine Mack. Not Mom. Not even a phone call to ask how I'm holding up since her father passed. Gary's eyes widened. He was connecting dots he hadn't seen before. But she still expected me to drop $70,000. On demand. Kathy sobbed. Just stop. Please stop. I looked at her. Not with anger. With truth. You're right. I'm stopping. I'm stopping the cycle where your needs come before my dignity. I'm done funding dreams that I'm not allowed to be part of. Right then Rosa texted. Wedding officially cancelled. Guests being told. Some asking questions. I glanced at the screen. Then back at Kathy. It looks like it's over. Her knees gave out and she sank into Gary, who caught her like someone unsure of what he was even holding on to. You could have fixed this, she whispered. So easily. No, I said. You could have. With one call. With basic kindness. But instead, you sent me a bill. And for the first time I saw it. Not just a daughter I didn't recognize. But the woman I'd allowed her to become. Because I was too afraid to say no. Until now. Gary stood frozen, holding Kathy like she might slip right through his arms. Elaine, he started. There must be a misunderstanding here. Maybe Kathy didn't communicate things properly, but... No misunderstanding, I said, cutting him off gently. Just a daughter who believed she could erase me from the celebration and still cash the check. Kathy stepped forward. Her voice was smaller now. Desperate. What if we reschedule? Do something smaller. What if I invite you properly this time? I didn't answer right away. Because I wanted her to sit in that space, where you're not sure if the bridge is still standing or already burned. And why would you do that? Yes. Out of love. Or damage control. She hesitated. And there it was, the pause. The truth in her silence. If I couldn't contribute a dime, I said, would you still want me there? Would you want me, or just what I can offer? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. I thought so, I said softly, and I closed the door. Locked it. Then leaned against it. Not in sadness, not in anger, but in relief. My phone buzzed. Rosa. I just saw them leave your building. Are you okay? I'm perfect, I told her. And I mean that. How did it go? She asked. Documented meltdown in the hallway. Probably the most honest moment Kathy's ever had. Rosa chuckled. And get this. I just booked another job. That neighbor you sent my way. She hired me for her 50th wedding anniversary. Said she's been telling everyone about me. I think you just changed my life too. I smiled, staring out the window as the clouds started to break. Sunlight peeking through for the first time in days. Across town, my daughter was probably watching her dream day unravel. Somewhere else, a wedding planner was likely drafting a new clause about confirmed payments. And me. I was standing in my tiny kitchen, in my modest apartment, surrounded by peace, not guilt. You know what I realized? Kathy thought sending me that invoice would force my hand. Instead, it gave me freedom. Freedom to stop begging for space in a life I wasn't welcome in. Freedom to stop mistaking guilt for love. Freedom to remember who the hell I am. So if you've ever felt like someone only wants you around when your wallet's open or your mouth is shut, hear me now. Enough. Without money. Without apology. Without proving anything. Say no if it disrespects you. Close the door if it costs your peace. And most importantly, don't ever forget that your worth is not measured by what you give to someone who takes you for granted. If this story hit something inside you, go ahead, hit that like button. And if you want more stories that remind you to choose yourself, to set boundaries, to value your damn soul, subscribe. Because around here we don't play doormat. We build doorways. And we decide who walks through them.